Welcome to the Rise and Wander podcast, where we'll explore adventure, spirituality, and empowerment through the outdoors and beyond. Join me, Carla Amador, as we focus on topics around the mental, physical, spiritual, and emotional benefits derived through the outdoors. You'll also hear inspiring stories, get educated, and more. Let's get started. This season's podcast is sponsored by Oboz Footwear, based out of Bozeman, Montana. I proudly wear my Oboz footwear for hiking, traveling, and more. They have many styles and options to choose from for all your winter and hiking needs. Looking for hiking boots, recovery shoes, or fast and light hikers? Look no further and check them out at obozfootwear.com. Welcome to Rise and Wander, episode 7. I am so happy to be here with you today because we're going to get into what to expect now that you are officially in Tanzania. We're going to get into it, and I'm just so excited to share everything that I learned and kind of give you some tips and all of that. So we landed in Arusha. That's where we flew into and we were picked up. But before I get into that, I actually want to just let you know, gearing up to the trip, we talked a lot about like what you need to get ready, training, gear, and all of that. And so at this point, about a couple weeks before, you're probably going to want to start your packing and just kind of make sure you have everything. So I did that. I went through all my things. I just kind of made sure everything was good to go. I re-waterproofed my items and I packed my stuff and, just kind of went through my list, made sure to pick up any last minute things. So just make sure to give yourself, I would give yourself 2 weeks. Do a pre-pack so that you're ready to go. And if you forgot something, then you have time to get it. All right, so it's time for your trip. I always say this, like, I could forget everything except for my credit card and my passport. So make sure you put that away and have it ready to go. Print your itineraries, all of that paperwork that you're going to need, your visa, etc. So you're going to, make sure you have all of that ready to go. Get yourself some good rest. Make sure you pack all your medications, all of the things. It was a really long flight, and I was so lucky to get to travel with 2 people from here. I actually traveled with Cherry and Faith, and we got to the airport and we had like a cluster, which I talked about in another episode with our visa. Thankfully, everything worked out and we made our flight and we flew to New York. So that flight was, I think it was like a 4-hour flight, and we left around, I want to say midnight. So sleep was not great. We got to New York and then we had a layover of like 8 hours. So we all kind of like took a nap, found a corner in the airport. And then before we knew it, we had to rush to our terminal because we were totally in the wrong terminal. So get to the terminal first, then take your nap. Okay. So seriously, I just want to say this. I am not perfect by any means. I make tons of mistakes, and you're learning from me to not make those same mistakes. So, I just want to say that because you don't have to be perfect to teach. You don't have to be perfect to share your experience and your wisdom. And no one is perfect. And I would be not authentic if I was, trying to act like I had everything together all the time. So we made it to Nairobi and we were there for a couple hours. And then from there, we ended up flying into our final destination in Tanzania. So it was a long flight. I don't even know how many hours it was. So we finally made it to Arusha, where we were greeted by our guide. Everything was fine with the visa. Thankfully, everything worked out. I made it through. And this airport was still about an hour from our hotel. We made it to Arusha, made it to our hotel. I was so exhausted. I pretty much fell asleep on the car ride there, got checked in and just went to bed. So next morning, we ended up waking up, having breakfast at the hotel, and we got together with a partial amount of people from the group. So I got to meet some of the incredible participants that I was mentioning to you that came on the trip. And the first thing we did was we arranged for a car to pick us up. about half of the group went to do like a little city tour of Arusha. And so we went to like a cultural center and saw art, and there was music and had a snack. And then from there, they took us to this market. And at the market, we got to see the locals and what they buy. And it was such a cool, humbling experience. Everyone did a little bit of shopping, and around 4 we came back to the hotel and we were going to start our briefing. So at the briefing, I believe everyone had arrived except for maybe it was one other person that was missing. And so we all got together for the briefing. I gave everyone little goodie bags, welcome bags that had tons of goodies. And it was just really something for me to show my appreciation for everyone who showed up on the trip. And then the guide came and he briefed us and kind of gave us like, here's what to plan for. He went over any other pending things we needed. Like some of us were renting things from him. As I mentioned, I rented quite a few things because I was going to be traveling onward and I could not carry these items with me. And then from there, we all headed over to dinner and got to connect and learn about why we were there and share a little bit about ourselves and our stories. As someone who is wanting to facilitate these connections, had facilitated some questions and asked everyone their why. And I talked about this a little bit earlier on, but it was so inspiring, from lifelong dreams to someone who's looking for adventure. And it was really awesome to hear why people showed up. We all got back to the hotel, got ready because the next morning we were going to get ready to start our trek. I'm going to actually be looking at some of my notes. I always want to make sure that I touch on the important things. So the next morning was day 1 of our trek. We all got up early. We were all excited, had breakfast, and our guide was there waiting for us. And we all got our bags ready. We left certain items at the hotel because we were going to come back to this hotel after our trek. And, we're only taking the things that the guide was going to be taking on our behalf and our personal items that we were going to take up with us. So after breakfast, we were all excitedly getting everything together, and they were placing everything on the bus, and we were, just kind of checking in. You could feel the excitement in the air. We're all like going on this trip together. We finally get into the bus and we start our 2-hour drive into the gates for the Masheme trailhead. And it took us about 2 hours. It was a scenic drive. You could see villages and everyone's having conversation and excited. And you see Africa, you see people walking down the street and animals. And you get this overwhelming feeling of like, wow, I am somewhere else in the world and I'm getting to experience that culture. At least that's what it is for me when I travel. And so, we finally get to the gates and I think everyone's just like excited to get started. We get there. There's some things that need to be done in the beginning. Like we're all putting our bug spray on, our sunscreen, and you have to do paperwork and check in and sign in. So we're doing all of that. And I wanted to start off by honoring everyone and kind of just sat with everyone a little bit before. And before we knew it, it was time to get started. And you kind of cross these gates and it's kind of like your initiation into I'm doing this trek. So we get started and we're trekking through the jungle and it's just awesome. After about a couple hours, we come to lunch and the porter set up this beautiful picnic table and just like spread. And I will share some things about that. I think in the beginning, a few people from the group had a hard time with it because we have all these porters and they've just prepared us this lunch. And I think there's a little bit of that culture shock initially that kind of took over a few of the people, like, oh, I wasn't really expecting to be served hand and foot. It took a little bit for, I think, those individuals to get comfortable to receive that kind of service. And so be prepared for that. Maybe there will be a little bit of culture shock, or you feel like a king and queen literally on something like this. And, again, going back to what I said in the beginning, like this is their livelihood, and coming already prepared with that wisdom and knowledge, receiving with gratitude, and that they all get their meals. I did talk to them and make sure like everyone's being fed and all of that. Those are things you can ask beforehand, and tip well, make sure to take care of your people because they truly did take care of us. So after lunch, the porters break everything down and they take it all up for you. We hiked for 7 miles and we made it to Masheme camp at 9,350 feet. I did forget to mention we started at 5,718 feet. So that was a bit of a day. It was really beautiful hiking in the forest, and the sun was starting to come down, and we made our camp. They went above and beyond. They really fed us well. There was no issues with food. There was always an abundance of food. Day two, after a very lovely breakfast, we had an amazing surprise. And I hope this would be a great place for that to pop up somehow. This was a time where our porters and guides surprised us with a dance and songs and just, wow, melted my heart. There's a Hakuna Matata song that they sing. Once we got it in our head, we would sing it all the time ourselves. So after this surprise, we started to ascend up a steep ridge and we took a long break. And I remember hearing these locals, probably guides, singing, and the group was starting to get to know each other. The walls are coming down. People are really connecting and speaking and sharing stories. And I remember Lindsay and I are having these really deep discussions of life, looking around. I find these beautiful things from the mountain. I found a big piece of onyx and I found a mountain goat skull. And I just remember being like, oh my gosh, did anyone see this? I have pictures of it. And I remember getting to another little area where we stopped and the ravens of the mountain are like playing and they're everywhere. And it's just like they own the mountain, you know? So it was just such a cool day. I felt so much gratitude for the land. And that's really important for me is to always honor the land and to really connect and be in gratitude and know I'm just a visitor here. So thank you for having me. And at this point, we start really kind of seeing views. The sky is blue and it was really beautiful. I wanted to take a moment to thank this season's Rise and Wander podcast sponsor, REI. REI is the outdoor gear retailer of the 52 Hike Challenge. I've been a member since I started my 52 hikes in 2012, and they've helped outfit me for all things hiking and outdoors since then. Becoming a member has many perks like 10% back annually on eligible purchases, a satisfaction guarantee, which gives you up to a year to return any purchases you aren't satisfied with, free shipping in the US, and so much more. Please visit them at rei.com. Join me for a year of hiking in 2025 with the 52 Hike Challenge. Commit to your personal journey outdoors alongside a supportive community and make 2025 your year of hiking. Take your family, friends, furry pets on an adventure they'll always cherish. Plus, you'll gain the physical, mental, spiritual, and emotional benefits derived through nature and hiking. Learn more and sign up at www.52hikechallenge.com. And see you on the trails. We hiked into a river gorge and it starts getting gloomy at this point, and eventually we get up to Shira camp. So this was a shorter day. It was 3 miles, but we had about 3,000 feet of elevation gain. And so the big thing is always pole, you know, take your time. We're not in a rush. We're trying to acclimatize. So we just really all enjoyed it. All right, now we're on day three of our trek. So again, we wake up, we're greeted by a fantastic breakfast and serenaded. And this time we're all getting comfortable and we're joining in the fun and dancing. And Ralph, the older one of the group, he basically gets called out to dance. And I'm like, whoa, Ralph literally has the moves. And it was so heartwarming to see all of this come together and to see how the group really starts just being, you know, just being joy and playful and fun. And the porters and the guides are dancing in their native ways. It was amazing. So, you know, at this point, it's starting to get chilly. We all bundle up and we're getting ready to leave. I forgot to tell you something really important, and I'm going to take a break here and a moment to share this with you because I forgot to tell you that my friend Erin had passed away like a month before this trip. Erin is a beautiful soul who I met through the 52 Hike Challenge. She did the challenge and really became someone that was a really good hiking friend. We did a lot of backpacking adventures together. We spent a lot of hikes together. She showed up to a lot of my talks and events, and She died a month before, and I really wanted to honor her. And so I brought a picture of her and a little letter that a friend of hers wrote up with me. I wanted Erin to be a part of this. And I was looking at my notes on day 3, and I carried her every single day, and I would take her picture out and I would take pictures of her every single day. And like, she's here with me, you know. I remember taking a photo of her and, gearing up for the 6 mile, almost 3,000 foot of elevation gain day, and just wanted to really honor her and her essence on this adventure. So, anyhow, she'll be coming up in some of these stories. So I took the photo and we start taking off and we hiked up a ridge. And this is a day we actually hiked this lava field. It's called the Lava Tower. And then the rains began. We put our layers on and we kept hiking. But you eventually hike up this Arrow Glacier to Baranco Camp. We didn't see the glacier at this point, but we get to our campsite. We were all wet, we were all soaked, but we were still smiles. And it was an interesting, very wet day. I think everyone at that point was kind of like, okay, how do we dry our things? Because most of our things were kind of soaked. So now we're at day 4. Everyone kind of like lets everything hang inside their tent, and we're just all hoping we can get through the next day. So, I think day 4, everyone's kind of awake and we're a little chilly, but, we all have backup clothing and such. I remember coming out of my tent and the views were incredible. The moon was out. It was early in the morning and you could still see the moon, and you just see these rock towers in front of you. It was a bit chilly and gloomy. And I remember having breakfast and everyone's a little bit cold, but we're still going to do this. So after getting our breakfast, getting more layers on, our little song and dance, taking my photo of Erin, we all really were in high spirits. And this was a day that we're going to make it up the Baranco Wall, which is a bit of rock climbing. It's like third class. And, you have to really be like 3 points of contact, which means always have either 2 hands, 1 foot, or 2 feet, one hand as you're climbing. You always want to make sure you have that. This was actually one of the busiest parts of the trek. The landscape was really cool. I remember some rivers and really beautiful green plants that were so beautiful. They kind of look like Joshua trees, but they have these beautiful flower faces. The landscape was beautiful. We really had to take our time. This is where I really started noticing more people. And because it's this wall that you kind of have to scale a certain way, you definitely start noticing a lot more people going up this wall. The guides really made sure everyone was safe, and that was awesome. And some people find this area to be the most challenging. I just remember seeing the porters and being like, wow, they're just scaling this thing up and like flying past us. I really have a lot of respect for the porters and just so much gratitude. And I asked a couple if I could take photos of them, and just was super inspiring. So once we're like getting up towards the end of the climb, the rain starts again. And we're like, oh my goodness, we're soaked. And now we're going to get soaked again. And so everyone puts on their stuff. And, we make it to Karanga Camp now. We're at 13,000 feet. And I think everyone was still like, okay, we're going to figure this out. I remember they set up a taco bar and we're just all brainstorming like how to make sure that our stuff gets dry and helping each other through the day. I'll never forget that night, because that night the stars came out and it was such a beautiful view, and you could see the city below and it's cleared up. And so we were doing some night photography and really enjoying that evening. And so that brings us to the last day that I'm going to share, which is day 5. And this morning, I remember waking up and I get out of my tent and there she is. There is this view that you see in this background. I'm just like, wow, so incredible. And it's a view of Mount Uru Peak, or Kilimanjaro. And it's just sunny and breathtaking. I remember having my cup of coffee and looking at this view and just like, I can't believe I'm here. This is incredible. And it's sunny. And I'm like, thank you, universe God, for like allowing us to have a little sun today. This was the point where like I think everyone starts getting excited, and Faith brings out all these fun little masks, and we're taking portraits of everyone in their silly faces and taking pictures together and just having a fun time. we had our dancing and we had such a great time. And I think as we were getting closer to our goal and people are getting more inspired, no matter what's happening, everyone's just kind of like, all right, let's keep going. So, we start our trek and we take a really nice break and we take more photos. And then 2 miles later, we make it to Barafu Camp. And I would say Barafu Camp is by far the busiest of all camps because this is summit camp. And there's just definitely a lot more happening there. And I want to be completely upfront about everything. I found that there was a bit more trash than I had seen on the mountain. And I brought that up to the guides and was like, so what's going on? Like, why is there so much trash? And, unfortunately, some people, they leave trash behind. And so they were saying once a year we come up and we clean the mountain. So we take care of it. And I truly hope that is being done because it is a busy mountain. I don't think we go up there expecting to see trash. Be mindful. Don't leave your trash behind if you can on your way down, because this is the last camp. Maybe bring some things down with you. I'm always trying to think about ways we can leave it better. So I did pick up some trash on my way down the mountain when we were leaving. We made it up to camp and they set it up. And at this point, I remember everyone is like, thank you, sun. The sun is fully in its highest potency, and everyone is just like laying their clothes out, making sure it's all dry because we've just had these days of intense rain and our gear is wet and we need our stuff to be dry for summit day, which was actually happening a couple hours later. And so, we all put everything out. Everyone's like taking breaks, and then we have our lunch. And during lunch, we end up having our briefing for summit day, which is going to happen at midnight that next morning. So it really did feel like the longest 48 hours of my life because, we've had this day and then now we're going to start our summit at midnight. And so we did our briefing. We were told what we need to expect, that we were going to have our lunch and then we were going to have a dinner around 6 and then another meal around 11. And then midnight, we're going to start our ascent. Everyone was excited. The guides are like, try to get as much rest as you can. And I personally could not sleep. I tried taking melatonin, nothing was working. I think I was too excited. It's also, you're up at altitude. At this point, our camp is up at like 15,000 feet, I believe. And, it's hard to sleep close to 16,000 feet. So we all ate, we all started resting. Everyone's just kind of doing their thing, making sure our clothes are dry. We have our dinner and then we have our second dinner. And before you know it, it's like now 11. And I remember sitting in my tent between the first dinner, which was around 5 or 6, and it starts raining. And I see thunder and lightning. And I'm like, are we going to be able to summit? I was nervous. And total side note, but I went for the Grand Teton once and we had really bad rain and we were unable to successfully summit. So I was like, oh, I hope it's not another one of those. And, I talk about this in the beginning of the podcast for this series that I told everyone we're going to try to make the summit, but there are elements outside of our control, whether it's our health, whether it's the weather, the mountain speaks its own language and it's not up to us. I'm talking about life lessons and what the mountains teach me and I think others is that we have no control over the elements. We can try our best, but you really need to be flexible and go with the idea, I'm going to try, but also, I have no control of the circumstances and situations and the weather. So I really had to surrender and be like, okay. And at that point, I hadn't talked to the guide yet, but I talked to him at 11 when we were having our last meal and before summit attempt. And I was like, are we going to be able? And he's like, oh, yeah. What I came to realize is the actual thunder and lightning was actually happening below where we were on the mountain. So that was really interesting. So, yes, I was wondering if we were going to make our summit, and you're going to have to stay tuned to our next episode to find out. Thank you so much for being with me on this episode. And I just wanted to share what I experienced. I mean, there's so much more I could tell you about the trek and all the cool things, seeing some women porters, seeing other groups who are all trying to do this thing you're doing, the songs, the encouragement, the high fives, the laughter. I think it's something you'll have to experience for yourself. So if you're listening, Partially, you might be listening because you're interested in going to Kilimanjaro, and partially, you might be just kind of listening to this podcast because you love hiking and you love the idea of getting outside and pushing yourself and getting prepared for something like Mount Kilimanjaro. Maybe your summit is something else. Maybe it's another of the seven summits. I hope that this has brought you a little bit of laughter and joy and some considerations. I will see you in the next episode. Please subscribe, share with your friends, and leave us a comment. I'll see you soon.